This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we'll be talking to amazing award-winning author, Kathleen Donnelly, about her newest release, Killer Secrets. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you so much for having me here.
I am so excited that you and Juniper are here. I feel like I've got the whole thing.
We are all very happy to be here. Yeah, we have Juniper behind us. So Perfect. We are all here.
Perfect. Well, before I start in and start questioning you all, can you give us a quick overview of what Killer Secrets is about?
Sure, I would love to. So Killer Secrets is the third book in the National Forest Canine series. In this book, Maya and Juniper must find a serial killer whose dumping grounds is in the National Forest. And his dumping grounds are exposed when an avalanche cascades down a mountainside and exposes a bunch of bodies. And so they're U.S. Forest Service law enforcement, and they go in and they must find him before he comes after them. So
perfect setup for a wickedly twisted plot. It was so fantastic. That first moment, starting us off with an avalanche, I was you already had me already just holding my breath.
Thank you.
What made you start it that way? Is that something about kind of where you've lived and you've had experiences with avalanches, perhaps?
You know, there were several things leading up to that. One is I don't have any personal experience, luckily, with avalanches, but we're not too far from the mountains where they can easily be triggered. And every year in the wintertime, you're reading the newspaper and people go backcountry skiing, backcountry snowshoeing or snowmobiling, and they unfortunately trigger avalanches. And it's amazing what they've done to improve gear for survivability and things like that. But it's still just a very dangerous deal. And you really need to know if you're going to go in the backcountry, you need to be very experienced and be ready for that and let someone know where you're going. So I had that side of things. And then I also happened to read an article, and it was written about how people just go into the mountains and disappear, which is true. People can be hiking, things happen. Sometimes they're not found for years. Sometimes they're never found at all. The mountains really are like their own mysterious character that just, in real life, you know, there's things can happen. And I thought, well, what if I flip that? And what if the mountains actually exposed where, you know, where these people were, rather than the mountains taking them, they let someone know, hey, here's some remains you've been looking for. And now you have a mystery to solve. So that was kind of my way of thinking about it. Because even living here in Colorado, I really think of them as their own character. They're beautiful, but they're dangerous. And I love them, but you have to respect them when you go up there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic when you talk about, as an author, that hitting that goal of setting as a character in the story. Yeah. The Colorado Rockies are just, like you said, such a profound, when you think about places on the earth, such a profound place and so much power to give and to take. It was absolutely so compelling. So thank you for starting us off that way. It was fantastic. Yeah. So this is part of your National Forest Canine series, right?
It is. This is book 3. Chasing Justice was the first book. And that's sort of the backstory as to how Maya, the Forest Service officer, and her canine Juniper came together. And then book 2 is Hunting the Truth. And that book is about Maya solving her mother's and grandmother's cold case. And it also shows, though, since I'm a dog handler, I wanted to show the progression of partnering up with a dog and how over time, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So that was my goal and continues to be my goal as I continue to write the series.
That bond between Maya and Juniper is so incredibly intimate, and you show us that relationship in so many different ways. Could you share a little bit about your own history with dog handling and how that inspired the way that you've developed that relationship?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I worked for 19 years for Sherlock Hounds Detection Canines, and I wish I'd come up with that name as a mystery writer, but the credit goes to my business partner. But I worked in schools. We're a private company, and the dogs were trained to find drugs, alcohol, and gunpowder, and to keep schools safe. But when you go and you start working with a partner like a dog, it's amazing. You get to know them better than almost like your own family. You know all their little quirks, and they know you. So they know when I'm having an off day, and they fill in for me, or they will, they're just amazing. So it's actually really hard to portray that bond on paper, and I've worked really hard. I've called it a dance, because it is. You have to trust your dog. You have to stay out of their way. You let them take the lead. you Which sometimes can be hard, especially with labs, because especially in schools, because once in a while they decide food might be better to try to go eat rather than they never alerted on food, but they would sometimes see if they could take a little sample while they were working. But you really let them take the lead. You really trust your dog. And it's just a really fascinating dynamic between dog and human. And I know for me, I mean, I'm not relying on my dogs for my life, but police officers, that canine is their backup officer. And that might be who comes in and saves them. So it's an even deeper bond, I believe.
And it was really beautiful the way that there's so much give and take between Maya and Juniper, as there is in all good relationships. And they rely on each other. And oh my gosh, Juniper is my ride or die girl. She is just awesome. Like every time, the way that she'll sense Maya's moods, if anybody's truly a threat, or even if there's an emotional threat, she seems so in tune. Is that something you've experienced?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they really read my feelings. They read other people's feelings too. Going into schools, my yellow lab Willow, she was funny. She'd be like, "I'm working, don't pet me." So, because we do allow the kids, or we did, we actually all retired this year. So I have to get used to saying it in past tense. But we did allow the kids to pet the dogs, and she would just look at them like, "I have a job to do. You're getting in my way." But one day we had a special needs kid come along. He was having a rough day. He's in a wheelchair. I believe he had like cerebral palsy or something like that. And she just stopped what she was doing. She went over to him. She climbed up in his lap, and he held her head. And they just had this moment that, oh my gosh, it just like, it can bring tears to my eyes right now. So, they're so intuitive. She just knew he needed that. And I just let it go. Usually if they were working, I wouldn't allow the kids to pet him, but obviously this was a very different situation. And they just had this moment together. And then she went right back to work, and he went on his way. And it was just, she sensed whatever he needed that day. And so it's just amazing. Dogs are just amazing creatures that way. And, they would come into a classroom and just zero right in on what they needed to do. I mean, they're just amazing. I can't say enough good things, obviously.
Well, the fun thing about it was you were able to play out the plot in so many different ways, because it's not just that read that you're giving us of Maya and how she's feeling. It's Juniper's reactions to her and how she's feeling, and everyone around her. When a mystery is afoot, that is the greatest thing for us readers, because we're wondering, oh, well, Juniper kind of quirked an ear at that person. Should we be looking at that person a little more carefully?
Exactly. That's fun to do. And I like to play with it, because I'm like, I don't want to give too much away, but the dogs know. I mean, they just have that sixth sense, and especially these Malinois high drive dual purpose dogs, they really have a sense of what's going on in the room. I've never worked one, but I've been around them, and they amaze me, because they actually can be very calm, and like you can pet them, but then the same dog I was petting went out on a SWAT call and apprehended a guy. And he knew he just had to flip that switch and go into working dog mode. So they really are amazing on how they read people and work together with us and really help us out solving mysteries every day. So
getting back to people who solve mysteries, Maya is such an awesome character. She is a flawed character who understands her weak points. She's amazing because she knows when to ask for help and what type of help she should pursue at what time. But she also considers herself a lone wolf. Where did the inspiration for Maya come from?
Wow, Maya's, I think she's got a little bit of a lot of different people I've met wrapped up into her, and probably some of myself too. Mostly though, over the years I've met both through working the dogs and then just also in my personal life, amazing women in law enforcement. And I mean, they've really inspired me. I know a gal who worked patrol for 30 years, and then she worked dogs with us as well once she retired. And another person who was an investigator for the CBI. And I was at a birthday party for the first gal I mentioned, and all of her friends came, and I met women who worked for the FBI, and I was sitting there talking to them, and a prosecutor who worked a lot of different cases, and listening to all of them was just inspiring as a female. Like all these strong women who went out and had these amazing careers while they were juggling their personal lives and family and everything else. And so I think there's a little bit of them. I have a friend who's a veteran, and she sat down and shared with me her experience. She was an Iraq veteran, and she dealt with a lot of PTSD, and she was really open and shared her experiences with me. So you take all of that together, and Maya's really her own character in the end. It's not like I can't say, oh, I based her off this person, or she is me, or, whatever. But it was fun creating her, because I feel like there's a little piece of just all these people I've met, and I've created this really fun character who's tough but vulnerable. And you're right, she knows when to ask for help, but she's also not afraid to go out there and do her own thing and dig in and do what needs to be done and do the right thing. She's a very honest person. I think that was one thing that really struck me with all the women I met I was talking about, is they always wanted the right thing. There was a lot of they want to solve these cases for the families, but they want to solve them correctly. They want the right person going to jail. So, yeah.
And a big part of that is what you perceive justice to be, right?
It is.
And
yeah.
Do you just want to close a case? Or like you said, do you want to get the right person no matter what that means? If that means you've got to push far and maybe get yourself in trouble at work?
Yeah, exactly. And it is kind of fun to push that edge. I mean, in fiction, I can, and I can probably push it more than anyone would in real life, but it's fun. That's part of fiction, right? Is painting them in a corner and then seeing if you can pull them back out. So it has been a lot of fun. But yeah, Maya's a very, she wants things done right. She's very honest, but she wants justice. She wants that for everyone.
One of the things, I will not ruin it and spoil this for readers, it is a fact that you mention in the book, and I think Maya is recalling this fact in her mind. And it's a statistic about the amounts of major trauma the average person experiences in their life. And then she reflects on how many seriously traumatic incidents folks in law enforcement encounter in their lives. And I would expect that in the military, those numbers are rather similar. And again, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, because it's one of those moments that makes you stop reading and your jaw drops. And you think, yes. Oh, wow, I knew that was a tough job, but did I really get all of that? What was it about the PTSD angle? And you write that so well. The details, the empathy with which you write it is so powerful. What was it about giving her PTSD and having her have to work through that while she's trying to do one of the hardest jobs in the world?
I think there were several things with that. One was I was involved in a veterans program with a place called Hearts and Horses. They do amazing things for many people, but veterans is one of many programs they have. And I just met some folks through there, and what amazed me is they came back and after so much service and working through PTSD, and many of them had gone on into law enforcement and done these jobs. And they're continuing to work and get, I don't want to say better is not the right word. They're learning how to manage it and how to just deal with the emotions that come with it. And one thing that was interesting to me is there were a lot of, at the time I was involved, which has been quite a few years now, but there were a lot of women in the program. And I remember one of them saying, oh yeah, they think because we weren't on the front lines, we don't have PTSD. And they said, when you go over and you're in a war zone, no one cares if you're female and supposed to be on the front line or not. You're going to see things, you're going to be involved in things, it's going to happen. And that really stuck with me too. So I thought, I want a female protagonist with dealing with PTSD from serving, but coming back and moving forward with her career and moving forward with her life and learning to manage it. And so that was my thought process. And mostly my biggest thing going into it is I was like, if I'm going to do this, I have to portray it right. I have to honor the women who have served and do it right.
Well, it was beautifully done. Like I said, with such empathy, understanding, and educating the rest of us, helping us the way that art can to appreciate what others are struggling with and just the full breadth of the human experience. So thank you. Thank you for writing that so well.
Oh, thank you.
Now, one of my favorite words in the book, and I've got to believe, I mean, I am a bit of a word nerd, but I still find new words that blow me away, even on a daily basis. This one I kind of think you made up, Kathleen.
Okay.
It's the word maligator.
Oh, maligator. I was wondering which word. I actually cannot take credit for making it up. That is slang and dog handling. So I do like to throw in slang when I can, when it makes sense in context. Once in a while, my editor will say, that's not really making it. I'm like, oh, okay, I know what that means. But but you're right. It's not making sense. But maligator is what we call the Malinois, because we say they're a cross between a Malinois and an alligator, because they are they're amazing dogs. The SWAT dog I was telling you about, I met him at an evening event for the sheriff's office, and he was just so sweet, nice Malinois. But he was the same one that went out and apprehended someone with the SWAT team. And so when you flip that switch and turn him on, and I've seen it at our trainers too. He had a Malinois in training that they just, man, when they apprehend, it's stronger, harder, faster than I think just about any other breed. And I've never worn a bite suit. I haven't been brave enough because even though you have the bite suit, you have a lot of dog and a lot of pressure coming down on you and shaking your whole body. I remember at our trainers, he was trying to talk us into wearing a bite suit with this Malinois. The Malinois' name was Vader, so it fit. And Vader was also very sweet until he brought that bite sleeve out and he knew he was on. So we actually ended up ratcheting with the tie down the bite sleeve to a tree. And we let him go. And he went and attached onto it and he shook it all the way down. I have a video of it that on an old phone I should dig out because there was bark flying everywhere. And I was like, oh my God. And so that's why they say maligator, because we're going to release the maligator. So
well,
yeah.
It's perfect that you mentioned that, because I remember Maya saying that was something that Juniper did, was jump for branches. I thought, oh my God, what would that look like? And now you described it. I'm more scared than I was before.
Yeah. And you know what's really amazing about the breed is they are that high energy and they are that intense, and yet they can go home and be with their families most of the time. I mean, once in a while you'll have one that the handler really has to watch. But most of the time they can, I wouldn't recommend them as a good family dog necessarily, but they can go home with their handlers, hang out with the family, and usually be pretty easygoing. And so they really are amazing that way, that they have these two sides to them. So
one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, you write human characters, you paint them with such an amazing colorful brush. You don't leave out anything in the human condition. We never get a one-dimensional character from you. There's always some little piece or something that adds that extra dimension and makes everyone interesting. And that doesn't always happen in a book. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, him, her, whatever. and you do that so well. But with the animals, you even describe a horse at one point. You've spent a long time caring, I can tell, about animals. You've mentioned horses and you've mentioned dogs. Where do you think that comes from inside you? Was it a special relationship as a kid? Is it just something that whether you see a pig or you see a crow, is it always in you to say, hey, this is a living being? Because you represent them so well and you bring them to life in ways that some people don't see other species.
Oh, thank you. You know, I have such a love for animals, and I think it was just something as a little kid. I remember my mom telling me my first words were, "Here, kitty, kitty." She said, you couldn't say hi, mom, or hi, dad. It was here, kitty, kitty. And I guess I didn't talk for a long time. And then finally one day I saw the cat go by and I leaned out and said that. So I think it is. I have so much respect for wildlife. I love them. I mean, you have to respect them, but all different animals, dogs and horses, I've trained. So I did train horses for a while too. And I have a horse. I have an older mare who's just hanging out and it's just gets loved on. She can't be ridden anymore. And then I have the two dogs right now, but you know, I just love all animals. I even, this summer I discovered I had about a 6-foot long bull snake living in the barn. And at first I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Well, and I know it's she because she finally laid some eggs. So that's the only reason I know, which I removed those and put those out in a good spot. I was like, you can't have your family in the barn. But she was just a really cool snake. And we actually kind of had this relationship. I'd go out and wherever she was, I'd be like, okay, I'll go way around you. I had no mice in the barn, so you have to appreciate her for that. So just things like that. But, you know, I'm obviously not going to go over and like pick her up or something. That's, you know, you have to respect them. But I kind of got a little attached to her in a weird way. So she was really neat. I don't know if she'll be back next year or not, but you know, and we see wildlife, we have foxes and bears and stuff like that. And you just really appreciate them for what they are and their place on this earth. So.
Well, like I said, beautifully written story, grabs you out of the gates with the avalanche, doesn't let go of you because there's so many little clues about these suspects and the villain you allow to talk to us, but in a beautifully veiled way, so that question keeps popping in our mind. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? All the way to the very end. Absolutely brilliant story. And the subplots, everything. Thank you so much for such a great read.
Yeah, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad you did as well. So, but it was fun to write.
Now, for all of your fans and for all the new fans that are going to be jumping on the canine bandwagon, where is the best place to find you, Kathleen?
Oh gosh. So there's several places on my website. There's a newsletter sign up and I send it out just once a month. And then you can find me on Facebook and Instagram most of the time. I do have a Twitter/X account, whatever you want to call it now. Although I'm not quite as active over there, but Facebook and Instagram are the two best places. And my website is KathleenDonnelly.com. And it has links to all the different social media and sign up for my newsletter there. And if you do, you actually get a little short free ebook called Working Tales. And it's a short story collection about the dogs that I worked and things that have happened that helped inspire my books.
That is absolutely awesome. And I have to say, I love your social media feeds. They are so well peppered with inspirational stories, sometimes about animals or people who handle them, and then just glimpses into your own work life with your pups. So it's absolutely phenomenal to follow you. Again, absolutely wonderful read. Killer secrets. You will not be disappointed. Thank you again, Kathleen, for joining me today.
Thank you so much again for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.